With the recent arrival of the live-action Ahsoka, I've seen a number of memes and other posts citing her as a better example of a strong female character than Rey is, and that got me wondering, what does make a strong female character? I would describe Rey and Ahsoka as strong both physically and with the Force, but there has to be more to it than just that. So I poked around a bit and found this rather interesting chart, which allows us to ask questions and determine what kind of female character we're actually dealing with. This actually dates from 2010, so Rey, Captain Marvel, and other recently prominent female leads won't be found on this chart, but to show you what we're looking at, over here in the villain section, we've got Azula as Girl Hitler. In the team section, we've got Lilu Dallas Multipass as the mystical artifact, and over here in the love interest section, we've got Megan Fox as the trophy. These are just a few examples of the character types that we can find on this chart, but up here at the top is what we're really looking for. These are 5 questions we can ask about a character to determine if they're a strong female character or something down here. Now, just because they're down here doesn't mean they're a bad character. They can be down here and still fill their role in the story perfectly. As I said, Azula is down here, but if we find a female protagonist in this area, then they might need a little more work. The first thing to decide is which Rey are we going to talk about, because I think about her differently depending on which movie we're discussing. Rey in The Force Awakens might answer these questions differently than Rey in The Last Jedi, or Rey in The Rise of Skywalker. So to start off, we're going with Rey in The Force Awakens. Is she a strong female character? And that leads us to the first question, which is what we're actually going to talk about today. Can she carry her own story? Basically, does the character have goals, and do they pursue them through the story? Does the character serve the plot, or herself? To illustrate what I'm talking about, we're actually going to compare Rey from The Force Awakens with Luke from A New Hope, because these two do share a lot of similar elements, and this question applies to Luke as much as it does to Rey. What is Luke's story goal in A New Hope? It's to return R2 with the Death Star plans to the Rebels. This is the visible goal that our character set out to achieve and to pursue through the movie. That's the story goal. What is Luke's personal goal? Well, most of his introduction is there to show us that Luke wants to leave the farm and go off on an adventure, but he's stuck on this farm until the Empire kills his aunt and uncle. Then he returns to Obi-Wan and states his personal goal.
I want to learn the ways of the Force and become a Jedi like my father.
He's wanted to have an adventure, and he wants to be a Jedi, and these things that he wants give him the motivation he needs to pursue the story goals. By pursuing these story goals, Luke is serving himself and not just the plot. This is what the question is asking. So what about Rey? In The Force Awakens, Rey's story goal, a lot like Luke's, is to return a droid, in this case BB-8, to the Rebels. Resistance. At least for the first half of the movie. This goal sort of dead ends in the midpoint, but starting out, this is Rey's visible goal to accomplish to end the story. So what are Rey's personal goals? To figure that out, we need to look at Rey's wound. The wound is some past event in the character's life that affects who they are now. Rey's parents left her on Jakku as a child. There could be a number of reasons why they did this, but it's possible that they didn't want, love, or care about her. That is a truth too painful to accept, so instead she creates the lie to protect herself. Her family is coming back for her because they do want, love, and care about her.
They'll be back. One day.
She wants to belong, for someone to come back for her, and her lie makes her think that the best way to make this happen is to wait on Jakku. This is why, even though she does have valuable skills and could leave, she doesn't. So that's what she wants, but it's not what she needs. She needs to accept the truth that Maz tells her, whoever she's waiting for on Jakku is not coming back. The belonging she seeks is ahead of her and not behind, maybe with Luke Skywalker. So Rey wants to belong, and because of her lie, she thinks the best way to do that is to wait on Jakku, and that's what she wants to do. This means that her personal goals do not motivate her to pursue the story goal. Rey doesn't choose to leave Jakku, so her and Finn get pushed off of the planet, after which Rey commits to returning BB-8 to the Resistance with Finn. That is, until she learns how far away it is. After finding out it's in the Ilenium system, she decides to drop them at Panema Terminal. For those of you unfamiliar with the geography of the Star Wars galaxy, Jakku is here. Takodana is here. Dakar, where the Resistance base is located, is out here, and Panema Terminal is right about here. My point is that Rey is essentially going to drop Finn and BB-8 at the Galactic Corner and is not interested in pursuing the story goal because her personal goals don't motivate her to do so. Unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you look at it, Han and Chewie show up before she can leave the party. And again, she's pushed further from Jakku. From this point, Han is the one who starts driving the story, literally, by flying them to see Maz on Takodana. On Takodana, Rey is pursuing the story goal, but reminds us that she really wants to be back on Jakku. Here, Rey has her Force back, and Maz tells her the truth she needs to accept, that no one is coming back for her. Rey says she wants no part of this and runs off into the woods. This is one of the big issues with Rey's goals in this movie. She wants to belong. Maz tells her she won't find that on Jakku, but forget about that, what you really need to do is accept the Force. And this begs the question, why? Why would Rey want to do that? This is a problem for me in the climax of the movie. We want her to accept the Force and become a Jedi. We've seen this movie before, and we know how this is supposed to go. We want her to do this, but she doesn't. She's not motivated to be in this story, and she demonstrates this as soon as she's pushed into it. There's a great line from JJ in the audio commentary about this moment.
The thing that she said she'd never touch again. But more than that, it's this moment of acceptance that this thing that we all knew was going to happen is now something she's accepting too.
Rey doesn't accept the Force because she wants to. She accepts it because she has to, because that's what the story or the plot needs her to do. There is another area, aside from her personal goals of belonging, where we could find motivation for Rey to be involved in this story. Unfortunately for her, that would be in the world building of The Force Awakens. For world building, I like to think of the iceberg that Brandon Sanderson talks about in his lecture series. The part of the iceberg above the water is explicitly shown or told to us. The part of the iceberg below the water is implied, and we're supposed to fill that in or extrapolate that it's there based on the details that we're given. If the details that we're given allow us to extrapolate correctly, it makes the world feel alive. In the case of Star Wars, that there's other things happening in this galaxy far, far away from whatever is happening on the screen. For example, in A New Hope, it's a period of civil war. There's an empire and there's a rebellion, meaning the conflict that we're being introduced to is immediately larger than what we're seeing on the screen. There used to be a republic and a senate, but the emperor has gotten rid of that, and now regional governors will assume direct control. This world has existed before we got here. It has a history. Luke has heard of this rebellion, and even though he hates the Empire, he's so desperate to get off this rock, like his friends did, that he wants to apply to the Imperial Academy this year. How much can we extrapolate from just those bits of information, and how much were we correct about when we finally got to see it? This doesn't even include any of the other details added by Obi-Wan when he explains the Jedi, the Force, or what happened to them. Now, The Force Awakens has an advantage in that it doesn't have to do all of the work that the other movies did, except for one very important thing which the other two trilogies do. We need to know what the board looks like. Who are the major players? How powerful are they? Where are they? And to show why that's important, we're going to go back to Rey. What is the First Order to her? How does she feel about them before she gets chased off of Jakku? Does she even know who they are? Did they come here often? Does the First Order control Jakku? What about the New Republic? What does she know about the New Republic? Does she care about anything going on outside of Jakku? Speaking of which, what is going on outside of Jakku? There's one thing in particular that Rey says to Finn that always jumps out at me.
So you're with the Resistance?
I've never met a Resistance fighter before.
This is a galaxy with millions of systems and trillions of beings. The Resistance is a paramilitary organization of 400-ish people. We're at a remote outpost on a remote planet, and she's heard of this organization? Did BB-8 just tell her, or had she heard of them before? Is there a war happening or not? If so, why isn't the Republic involved? If not, how has she heard of the Resistance? This is the problem with the details we're given. If you extrapolate from these details, sooner or later you run into a contradiction or a mystery and a world that doesn't make sense. For a long time now, I've heard the criticism that the Star Wars galaxy of the sequel trilogy feels small, and that's a criticism that sounds right, but didn't truly make sense to me until I thought about the iceberg. From the top of the sequel's iceberg, it's difficult to imagine what the bottom looks like, or even if it's there. Why this is a problem for Rey is that because we can't answer the question of who the First Order is to the galaxy, Jakku or her, she has no investment in the stakes or what's going to happen if BB-8's mission fails. She's a scavenger in a remote outpost on a remote planet whose immediate concern is not starving to death and whose greatest desire is for her family to come back for her. Even being shot at by the First Order doesn't stop her from wanting to go back to that place at the first opportunity. If the New Republic doesn't control Jakku, and it doesn't look like they do, why would Rey care what happens to it? I don't even think she knows that the Hosnian system was destroyed. She's dealing with her own thing, which sent her running into the woods before that happened, and she doesn't look up until the First Order arrives. She wakes up on Starkiller Base not knowing where she is, and her new goal becomes escape and get back to Jakku. When Han, Finn, and Chewie come back for her, which is what she wants, Han is still the one driving the story, saying they can't leave without helping the Resistance. This is a big problem for me. As much as I love Han, at this point of the story, that should have been Rey's decision. That is what an actor-protagonist would do, but she's not even in focus in these shots because she's not the one driving the story. So that brings us back to the very first question that started all this. Does Rey carry her own story? I think no. She has goals, but they don't motivate her to be involved in the story or be invested in the stakes. Rey serves the plot and not herself. It is not until the end of the movie that Rey is actually motivated to go see Luke, but we won't find out about her motivation to do that until the next movie. This means that Rey is going to end up somewhere down here, but before we wrap up today, let's go ahead and see where she lands. Is she a villain? No. Is she mainly a love interest? No. Is she part of a team or family? In The Force Awakens, I would say no. How does she feel about babies? Not right now. Does she get pregnant? No. Is she in a horror story? No. Is she violent? After thinking about this, I said no, but if we said yes, the next question would be, is that her only trait? And the answer is no, which leads us to the same place. Is she nearly perfect? I had to think about this one for a second, because I don't think she is perfect, but the key word here is nearly. I was reminded of an interview that J.J. Abrams gave around the time of The Force Awakens, where he described the character as innately powerful, innately moral, and innately good, but also struggling with her place in the world and forced to fend for herself in every way. So she's not perfect, but I would say yes, nearly perfect. Is she older? No. Should the audience like her? That's a very definite yes. Who likes her more? If it's men, then Rey is the ideal woman, and if it's women, then she's a Mary Sue. Now everybody calm down. That result that I got in the 20 or 30 seconds it took me to do this the first time actually surprised me. Remember, this chart is from 2010. I didn't know Mary Sue was on this chart, nor was I expecting to end up there. I've been considering that argument for a while now, and the last time I gave it serious consideration, I was leaning towards no. I think her Mary Sue rating is extremely high, but if I remember my line of thinking right, there are a couple of important factors that keep her from being a Mary Sue. But that script isn't done yet, and I haven't made up my mind other than to say that I don't really like the term, which is why I try not to use it here. In any event, Rey in The Force Awakens does not get past the first question on the road to asking, is she a strong female character? This is because the world building and her setup give her no investment in the stakes, and her personal goals don't motivate her to pursue the story goals. She's pushed through the movie and ends up where we want her to be, but not where she wants to be. She serves the plot and not herself. So before we go, we could ask, is she a strong female character in the other movies? It would take us a while to go through The Last Jedi, and she might make it through those questions, but in The Rise of Skywalker, I can say that she won't. That's because of the last question, is she killed before the third act? Or, put another way, does her death serve her character or another character? Unfortunately for her, Rey's death is what allows Kylo to redeem himself. It serves him, but not her, and according to the chart, that makes Rey in The Rise of Skywalker fridge stuffing. So if you're interested, you can find a link to the chart in the video description and go through it yourself and see if you end up somewhere different than I did. If you disagree with anything I said, feel free to tell me what and why. But that's all I got for you today. I thank you very much for watching. I hope to see you next time, and may the Force be with you, always.